ballroom was dazzling, filled with shimmering lights and the soft murmur of elegant conversations. Daniel, a respected businessman, observed the scene with a hesitant smile. The people around him danced and laughed, but he felt slightly out of place, like a spectator in a show that wasn't his. As the champagne chilled in his glass, he reflected on his journey, the achievements, and above all, the choices that had brought him to this moment. Then amid the crowd, his eyes locked onto a familiar figure. A woman stood, radiant in a long dress the color of a twilight sky. Laura. He would recognize that smile anywhere. The years hadn't seemed to diminish her charm. She still exuded an aura that made him feel as if time hadn't passed. Yet there was something else that caught his attention. Beside Laura stood a young man, and the resemblance between them was striking. Daniel felt his heart race as if the world around him had suddenly stopped. The young man had the same brown hair, the same facial structure, even the same confident sparkle in his eyes. Daniel didn't know how to react. Shock overtook his body. His mind swirled with questions, doubts, and a storm of emotions. The scene felt surreal, almost like an echo from his past, and confusion set in. It was a moment he never expected to face, a weaving of stories that forced him to reevaluate his own past and the connection he had left behind. The sight of Laura standing next to the young man stirred a wave of memories in Daniel's mind. He closed his eyes for a brief moment and was transported to a not-so-distant past, when everything felt more vibrant, more intense. The first time he saw her was in a small art gallery, where paintings danced under the soft light. The sparkle in Laura's eyes as she admired a painting, the way she bit her lip when lost in thought, made his heart race. It was as if she had a special connection with the beauty around her, and he, captivated, found himself drawn into that world. The nights they spent together felt like a dream. Daniel remembered the smell of her hair, like the scent of fresh flowers, and the conversations that lasted until dawn. They talked about everything and nothing. About the future, about the dreams they shared, about traveling to far-off places, laughing as if the world outside didn't exist. He recalled how her fingers would entwine with his, as if they wanted to form an unbreakable bond. They were inseparable, young and in love, believing nothing could tear them apart. But reality was often harsher than the love that bound them. Daniel's responsibilities began to weigh on him. He had big dreams, aspirations that demanded time and sacrifices. As the months passed, the pressure to build his career became overwhelming. Work consumed more of his time and energy, while his relationship with Laura, though filled with love, felt like an added burden on his growing list of obligations. The decision to leave her wasn't easy. Daniel could still hear her words echoing in his mind, the pain that filled Laura's eyes when he told her he needed to move on. He remembered the silence that followed, the coldness that settled between them, and the way her heart seemed to break in that instant. What should have been a new beginning turned into a painful separation, and the guilt never left him. Years passed, but the pain of the loss never really faded. The success he achieved was overshadowed by the memory of a love that could have been. Daniel sighed as he opened his eyes, realizing that Laura's image wasn't just tied to his past, it was a part of himself that he had buried, but never truly forgotten. The party continued around him, but Daniel could barely hear the music or the laughter that echoed. The image of Laura and the young man beside her was etched in his mind. He felt a mix of longing and unease pulsing in his chest. What had happened to her over the years? What had brought her to this party with someone who, unsettlingly, was a younger version of himself? The questions multiplied, and he knew he needed answers. That night, as the silence of his luxurious apartment enveloped him, Daniel found himself submerged in memories. He walked to the window, gazing at the city lights sparkling under the dark sky. Each of them seemed to tell a story, but his was a narrative marked by regrets. What had he sacrificed in the name of his career? What had he lost by prioritizing success over love? The young man beside Laura seemed to embody everything Daniel could have been, a life full of hope, love, and choices that might have led him to a different destiny. He couldn't help but reflect. Had Laura found a new love, or was this just a transitional phase in her life? What would he do if that young man was indeed his son? The thought made his heart race. Had his decision to leave her caused him to miss out on knowing someone who could be part of him, an extension of his very essence? Determined not to let doubts consume his mind, Daniel decided he needed to speak with Laura. What did he have to lose besides more pain? He remembered moments when the connection between them was palpable, as if the universe was conspiring in their favor. He had to try. His heart longed for a reunion, even if it meant confronting the mistakes of the past. With newfound resolve, Daniel picked up his phone and searched for Laura's number. The impulse led him to the number he had memorized, even unwillingly, all these years. A simple message, but one full of emotion. "Can we talk? There are things I need to say." He hesitated before sending it, but part of him knew he couldn't wait any longer. The time had come to face what had been hiding in the shadows of his past. Daniel stood in front of Laura's door, his heart racing as memories danced in his mind like shadows from the past. Each beat was a reminder of what he had lost and what he was about to confront. He took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The sound echoed, and the anxiety grew, but so did the anticipation. He knew this moment was crucial. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the door slowly opened. Laura stood there, her gaze hesitant, as if weighing the gravity of what this meeting meant. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest at the sight of her face marked by the passage of time, but still radiating the same beauty he remembered. However, there was a shadow of pain in her eyes that made him hesitate. "Daniel," she began, but couldn't finish the sentence. The silence between them spoke volumes, filled with unspoken feelings and accumulated hurt. He stepped inside, and the air quickly became thick with the tension of the past. The conversation started cautiously, both trying to find words that wouldn't hurt, but soon the tension gave way to emotion. Laura expressed her pain and frustration, while Daniel tried to explain his choices. "I thought I was doing the best thing," he said, his voice faltering. "I was so focused on my career." "Focused on your career? What about me? What about Lucas?" Laura fired back, the hurt evident in every word. Daniel felt as though a knife had been plunged into his heart at the mention of Lucas, the young man he had just met. "Lucas is your son, Daniel. You left without ever knowing he existed." The revelation hung in the air like the echo of a bomb that had just exploded. Daniel was frozen, absorbing the magnitude of what he had just heard. It felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. What are you saying? I have a son?" The disbelief mixed with a flood of conflicting emotions. Fear, guilt, and a love he never knew could exist. Laura looked into his eyes, the pain in her gaze shifting into something deeper. "Yes, you do, and he needs you now more than ever." Her words echoed in his mind, sending him into a whirlwind of doubts. The life he had built was about to be redefined, and he had no idea how to handle it. He wasn't just a successful businessman anymore. Now he was a potential father, facing the weight of a parenthood he had ignored for so long. The meeting between Daniel and Lucas was charged with a heavy, tense atmosphere. Daniel arrived at the cafe Laura had chosen, a place that reflected the past, but was now the stage for a new chapter. He sat at the table, his fingers nervously intertwined, as he glanced around, trying to find some familiarity in the place, but everything felt strange. When Lucas entered, his eyes were like two storms, filled with a mix of distrust and resentment. "Are you Daniel?" Lucas asked, his voice sharp as if about to unveil a painful secret. Daniel nodded, trying to find the right words. "I am." "So you're the guy who decided to walk away and leave my mom alone," Lucas shot back, his tone filled with pain and anger. "She talked about you. Some nights when the silence was too much, she'd tell stories about you. A rich man who never cared." Daniel felt the weight of Lucas's words, each one hitting him like a blow to the heart. He wanted to explain, wanted the boy to understand. But how could he do that without sounding like he was making excuses? "Lucas, Don't call me Lucas," the young man interrupted, his voice rising. "I'm not you, I'm not what you want me to be." The tension between them grew, a silent battle of emotions they were both struggling to understand. "I'm not here to shape who you are," Daniel said, his voice softer but steady. "I just want to understand and, if possible, connect. I didn't know you existed. I never knew." Lucas looked down, his expression softening for a brief moment. "And does that make it better? You still left me?" There was a deep sadness in his voice, as if each word carried the weight of years of frustration. "I know I can't change the past," Daniel replied, the pain in his voice becoming more evident. "But I'm here now. I'm willing to try. You're my son, and that means more to me than anything." Lucas crossed his arms, his gaze distant. "That doesn't change who you are to me. You're a stranger who decided to show up in my life after all these years. How can I trust you?" The struggle within Lucas was clear, a reflection of his own search for identity amid abandonment. Daniel wanted to get closer, but he knew trust couldn't be forced. It had to be earned. "I don't expect you to trust me now, but please give me a chance, for both of us." A heavy silence settled between them as they stared at each other, each grappling with their own truths, on the brink of a new journey of discovery. The room was steeped in an awkward silence as Daniel, Laura, and Lucas tried to find some safe ground between them, as though the walls were closing in on the conversation that needed to happen. Daniel sat on the couch, in an environment that should have felt familiar, but now felt like an emotional battlefield. Laura stood in front of him, arms crossed, while Lucas stayed distant, like a shadow in the corner of the room. "So what do you plan to do now?" Laura broke the silence, frustration evident in her voice. "You want to be Lucas's father after all these years? How do you even see that happening?" Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Laura's anger was justified, but he was also wrestling with his own insecurities. "I'm not just here to be a father, but to try to understand everything. I want to know who you both are and how I can fit in," he responded, his sincerity becoming more tangible. Lucas, however, wasn't ready to accept that. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not some piece you can just fit into your rich, perfect life. This isn't a movie, Daniel," he shot back, his eyes burning with anger. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his choices. The gap between him and Lucas was vast, and the pain Laura carried seemed to echo his own abandonment. He remembered the dreams they once shared, the moments lost, and the life that could have been. But now all that remained was a tangled mess of unresolved emotions. "I didn't expect this to be easy," Daniel said, looking into Laura's eyes, then at Lucas. "I know I'm out of place, and no words can fix the past, but I'm here now, and that's a start. I want to learn how to be part of your lives, even if it takes time." The room seemed to breathe. The tension was still in the air, but a subtle shift was beginning to take shape. The strangers in the house now shared a space, even if small, and Daniel realized that it was on this common ground that rebuilding the relationship could start. Daniel left Laura's house with a heavy heart. Lucas's words still echoed in his mind, and the young man's rejection became an open wound, throbbing with every step he took toward his car. He wasn't just facing the pain of a son who despised him. He was grappling with the reality that his past choices had deep and lasting consequences. As he drove, the city unfolded before him, but everything felt faded, as if life around him were passing through a fog. He remembered Laura, her vibrant smile, the sparkle in her eyes when they talked about the future. Flashbacks overwhelmed him, showing moments where he saw her as the strong, fearless woman she had always been. But at the same time, he remembered the day he decided to leave her. The uncertainty, the fears, the desire to escape responsibility. All of it led him to a decision that would change their lives forever. In the flashbacks, Laura was a devoted mother. He saw her rushing to school with a young Lucas in her arms, balancing work and motherhood. The nights she stayed up, reading stories and soothing her son's nightmares, were marked by unconditional love. She always talked about the boy's future, dreaming of the achievements he could reach, the lives he could touch. "I will always be here for you no matter what," Laura would say, her gaze steady as Lucas listened. in awe of the certainty in his mother's words. Daniel wasn't there to witness those moments. He hadn't seen Laura's determination to raise a boy who seemed so beautiful and full of promise. Now, more than ever, he felt powerless in the face of the pain he had caused, both to her and to their son. In the silence of his car, the truth began to form in his mind. Laura's love for Lucas was a testament to what he had missed. And Lucas's rejection wasn't just a reflection of his own guilt, but also a barrier he had to break down. Daniel wanted redemption, but how could he earn the acceptance of someone he had never known? The path to reconciliation was unclear, but he knew he couldn't give up. This internal struggle for acceptance was only the beginning of a deeper journey. As he continued driving, a quiet determination began to rise within him. He needed to figure out how to be part of Lucas's life, not as a stranger, but as a father. The quest for acceptance had begun, and Daniel was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The atmosphere in Laura's house was thick, filled with unspoken words and repressed emotions. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, eyes fixed on a steaming cup of coffee that seemed tasteless. He could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him, a burden that couldn't simply be ignored or forgotten. As memories flooded his mind, an avalanche of regrets began to fall, threatening to overwhelm him. Laura entered the kitchen and, seeing him there, hesitated. Her expression was a mix of exhaustion and determination, as if every word she was about to say had to pass through a minefield of emotions. Daniel lifted his head, meeting her gaze. "We need to talk," he began, his voice hoarse. "About what, Daniel? What do you want me to say, that you're welcome back? That everything can go back to the way it was?" Her frustration was palpable, and he knew he was only scratching the surface of an ocean of pain. "That's not it," Daniel said, battling his own insecurities. "I just want to understand. I want you to tell me how you felt, what you went through." Laura took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she tried to keep her emotions in check. "You want to understand? Do you really think you can grasp the pain of raising a child on your own? Of telling him that his father simply left? I spent sleepless nights wrestling with doubt, with insecurity, and Lucas, well, he always asked about you." Her words cut through Daniel like a sharp blade. He felt shame wash over him, but also a desperate need to make things right. "I can't undo what happened, and I'm not trying to. I want you to know that I never stopped caring. But that doesn't change the fact that you weren't there," Laura retorted, her voice thick with emotion. "You weren't there for him, and now you show up, trying to step in as a father, as if that's enough. But you can't just show up and expect everything to go back to how it was." Silence filled the kitchen, and Daniel felt the weight of the truth in her words. The past was a shadow that couldn't be erased. He closed his eyes, trying to absorb the pain and love that were intertwined in their story. The struggle for forgiveness wasn't just about Laura and Lucas, it was also about himself. He had to forgive himself for not being the man they needed. "Laura, I want to fix this. I want to try, even if it's hard. I'm willing to fight for you and for Lucas, but I don't know how to do it without your help," Daniel confessed, his vulnerability becoming an invitation for a new beginning. Laura looked at him, and for a moment the wall between them seemed like it might break. The weight of the past was still there, but maybe, just maybe, there was hope for rebuilding. The air was thick with tension when Daniel met Lucas again. They were at a nearby park, a place Daniel had chosen deliberately, believing that being outdoors might ease the situation. Yet, as they faced each other, the coldness in Lucas's eyes cut through the air like a knife. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Daniel," Lucas shot back, the anger clear in his voice. "You left. And now you think you can just come back and everything will be fine? It doesn't work like that." Daniel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the young man's words. "I know it's not that simple, but I'm here because I want to try to understand. I want you to know that I'm not the same man who left. I've changed." "You've changed?" Lucas replied, disbelief crossing his face. "And how am I supposed to know that? You abandoned me, left me with unanswered questions, and the pain of not having a father. I grew up without you, Daniel. And now you want me to believe everything's okay?" The truth in Lucas's voice hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. He realized that his son's anger wasn't just a defense mechanism. It was also a deep desire to understand why he had been absent. "Lucas, I'm not here to erase the past, but to build something new. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." Lucas hesitated, confusion clouding his expression. "I'm angry at you, but I also want to understand. It's hard. It's hard to see someone I don't know trying to get close to me and wanting to be what you never were." Daniel saw the vulnerability in Lucas's eyes, and for the first time he felt a glimmer of hope. "Then let's try together. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I can promise that I'll fight to earn your trust." The tension between them began to ease, and a small space for understanding formed between the past and the future. The gentle breeze in the park seemed to bring new energy to the encounter between Daniel and Lucas. After the intense exchange, a heavy silence settled between them, but it was filled with anticipation. Daniel looked into Lucas's eyes, searching for a connection that once seemed impossible. "I know I'm not who you wanted me to be, but I'm here now, and I want to do things differently," Daniel began, the sincerity in his voice making Lucas seem less defensive. "I promise I'll be present. I want to be part of your life, not as a ghost from the past, but as a father who's willing to learn and grow alongside you." Lucas hesitated. The distrust was still there, but the seed of hope was starting to take root. "And how do you plan to do that? What will you do when things get hard again?" He was allowing himself to ask, a sign that he was open, even if just a little. "I'll fight, Lucas. I was never good at being a father, but now I want to try. I'll be here for the tough times, for the good and the bad. I'm committed to building something new, even if it takes time," Daniel replied, his voice firm and determined. Lucas seemed to consider those words, and the tension that had once separated them slowly began to fade. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on his face. "We'll see. A fresh start might be possible, but I can't forget what happened." "Neither can I," Daniel agreed. "But the past doesn't have to define who we are. We can face it together." With that understanding, the two of them stood up, ready to take the first step toward a new journey. The sun shone through the trees, lighting a path before them, a symbol that new beginnings are possible, even after pain. What would you do in Laura and Lucas's place? Would you have given Daniel another chance? Comment below what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so you don't miss any stories like this.